What's up, everybody? We're here on FreeCodeCamp.org. We're going to do another daily coding challenge, the one for August 16th. So we can find that by going to the curriculum page, then going to the Try Coding Challenge of the Day section, go to the archive, and then we can step back on the calendar to August 16th. On August 16th, the challenge was anagram checker. Given two strings, determine if they are anagrams of each other. So an anagram is a word that contains the same characters in any order as another word. They give you some examples, and we also have a constraint, I should mention. We can ignore casing and white space. So we can ignore, we should be ignoring uppercase and lowercase, and we should be ignoring the white space in either of the strings. So we're taking two strings, and in like our first test case, we have listen and silent. These are anagrams of each other. They both contain all the same letters. The letters are just in a different order. And so our anagrams, our function that we're working in, should return true when it's given those strings. Same with schoolmaster and the classroom. This is an example of ignoring the uppercase and lowercase and ignoring the white space. If we set it all to lowercase, we remove the space there, then they are going to be the same set of letters, and it should return true. An example of a failing case is hello and world. They both don't contain a W, they both don't contain an H, for example. So there is a more complicated way we can go about this, and there is a much more simple way we can go about this. We'll start with the complicated solution first, and we can think, we need to set all the letters to lowercase, right? So that we can compare them. And we need to do that on both strings. And then we can iterate through one string and return false if the other string doesn't include one or more of the characters. So yeah, we can iterate through one string's characters and return false if the other string doesn't include one or more characters. And then if not, if all that's good and happy, we can just return true. So this would be a more manual way to go about checking for this. And there's a more clever way to do this, but let's start with just looking at this. If you code this with me, you'll get a little practice, coding and typing. I think a big part of learning how to program at first is just getting used to typing code, because it's a different kind of typing. You have symbols and you're putting spaces and new lines more often than if you're like writing a paragraph of text. So here I am, I have a traditional for loop, and I am looping through the length of string 1, right? And for each character in string 1, if string 1, and I could also, in both strings, iterate through removing spaces and setting all the letters to lowercase. So if string 1 at this iteration isn't a space, then we can use that character, but we want to use it as a lowercase version of it. So there you go. But we need to do this on both strings, right? So we could copy this out and update the variables, and now both our strings are happy and ready to be worked on with the next constraint. But maybe an intermediary step, a little bit less complex, is that we can make a little helper function that's like remove space and set lower, right? Because we're essentially doing the same thing. And we need to take an input string in this little helper function that we're making, and we'll do all this work in here. And we will just have like a, R for the returning string. And we'll work on that R returning string using the incoming S string. Yeah, that looks like right. And we return R. Instead of doing that, we would just call remove space and set lower for string 1. And then we can do the same thing for string 2. And that will be all that work. Minimizes our code footprint a little bit. But there is a better way to do it. We'll get to that. We'll get the rest of this work done and we'll do it manually. But you notice if the length of string 1 and string 2 aren't equal after we remove the spaces and set everything to lowercase right here, we can just return false because they can't be anagrams of each other if that's the case. Length does not equal string 2 dot length, then return false. So that can be a little like early return. We don't even need to do the work down here if they aren't the same length, because they wouldn't contain the same characters in any order. So to iterate through, we'll use another handy dandy traditional for loop, and we'll pick one of the strings. It doesn't matter which one, and we'll iterate through it. And if string 2, so the other string, if the other string doesn't include this character, then we'd be able to return false, I think. It wouldn't account for the same character appearing twice in one string and not the other, because the other would include that character, but we can't get through the length of the string that we're comparing to without returning false. So at some point this would break and return false. I think that does it. So I'm going to make this a little bit smaller here so you can see all the code at once. So I'm going to just try to run this. There we go. So that passes the challenge. That'll work. But, based on what I just described and what's going on, maybe you'll see a more simple way we can go about this. And it may become apparent as I start to describe it. If you've watched my other videos, you'll see that often right off the bat, I'll do a regex call. In this one, we can, if we want to remove all the spaces in either of the strings, we can use a regex like this. This we can replace all the white space characters in the string with an empty string. And we can set it to lowercase. So this does the work of that helper function we just had. And we can call it on both strings. And there isn't, I can't imagine a reason why we need to create a new unique inner variable like this. We can just operate on the variables, the parameter variables that we have coming into the function. And at this point, again, if these aren't equal in length, the same logic applies. They can't be anagrams of each other. Right? And now our other bit of work had to do with checking to see if one character is included in the other string and iterating through the first string doing that. That can work, but if we sort the strings, right? So we can sort the characters in the string by splitting them into an array, calling sort without an argument, and then joining it back into a string. Now we have that same string, but all the letters are in order. And if we do that to both the strings, all the letters will be in the same order. And that allows us to simply check a direct equality between the strings. Since the characters appear in any order, it doesn't matter. We want to make sure they both contain the exact same characters. This is a way we can approach that, and it requires far fewer lines of code, and it's a lot more straightforward, kind of like easy to see what's going on, rather than trying to loop through and reason, or like look through and reason about the loops that we were writing in the other solution. That passes too, and I think it's a little bit easier to read. So that's your second, a little bit more easy to understand solution to this challenge. We can say, replace all, remove all spaces in the strings, set all the letters to lowercase if they aren't equal length, can't be anagram. And now alphabetically order the letters in the strings. The symbols would end up in the same order too. So I could say order the characters in the strings, directly compare string values. And that's what's going on conceptually. So thank you very much for watching this video. Appreciate your time and attention. If you want to like this video or subscribe to my channel, I'm going to keep working through these challenges until I get up to the present day of challenges. And after that, we'll probably move over to a different site and do some code challenges and get into a little bit more complicated, data structures and algorithm stuff, because that's really what I should be studying personally. So as I work through those challenges, I'll make videos just like this for those. Thank you very much. Appreciate you. If you got to the end of the video, comment below with a thumbs up or like your favorite emoji, even if it's a poop emoji. If you comment a poop emoji, I'll know maybe you didn't like this tutorial, and I'll try to do better next time. So feel free. Thank you very much, and I'll talk at you later.